Caribbean left to roam around, while those who should care for them are nowhere to be found.
See them hustle in the street for something to eat, but what about their education?
We must beware some exploiter out there will take advantage of the situation.
Don't just work on their plight. We've got to do what's right,
So that they can be the children they should be, not living in captivity, just happy and free.
Let us all give support to the children. Our effort must be here to prepare them. Every song is a very serious statement. The future is just down here as an agent. Open up your eyes, and then you better come and take our advice. Don't let the other conscience pass you by. You know, we don't want to see children die.
I was 15 years. I'll be 16 in June. I come in here since I'm about 14. Yeah, it's not really a place for humans to really be in here, check it out.
I know no family around and nobody to give me nothing to eat and things. I just come and work.
I don't want to be here. If I have a choice, I choosing whatever else. I'm choosing this. Me and my mother alone. My father, in a wrong, living somewhere else. He never with me. They want to be here the days of my life.
Hard to believe, isn't it? But child labor does exist right here in the Caribbean. The latest estimates from the International Labour Organization confirm what many have feared for some time, that the number of children trapped in the worst forms of child labor worldwide is greater than was previously thought. 179 million cases of exploitation. Many Caribbean governments, in their capacity as ILO member states, have already ratified the ILO Worst Forms of Child Labor Convention 182 and the Minimum Age Convention 138 in an effort to demonstrate their responsibility towards these children. But ratification in itself does not solve a problem that is both far-reaching and insidious. Before we can begin to fight for our children, we must know the enemy. So what are the worst forms of child labor? Any form of slavery, such as the sale and trafficking of children, debt bondage or forced labor, including armed conflict. The use of children for prostitution, pornography, or live pornographic performances. The use of children in illicit activities, in particular drug trafficking, and any work that is likely to harm the health, safety, or morals of children. Caribbean children under the age of 18 are being subjected to most of these worst forms as outlined by the ILO. To help the ILO get a better idea of the scope of the problem, a series of independent rapid assessment surveys were carried out in various territories. The results varied slightly depending on the profile of each country, but the bottom line was the same.
The main finding of the rapid assessment study is that child labor is linked to poverty, and that within households where there may not be enough income to take care of the needs of the family, children in many instances are used as a resource to generate income and bring revenue into the household. The study revealed that many more boys than girls were involved in child labor. However, we know from experience that female child labor is much more hidden in that it resides within the domestic sphere, either as domestic laborers or within the commercial sexual exploitation, where it's much more difficult to get at the victims. The boys are seen and are much more visible.
But who are the vulnerable children? Most experts agree that the poorer the child, the more susceptible he or she becomes to the lures of child labor.
We asked the parents for the reasons why they engage, have the children working. And then most parents, over 80% stated is to teach, that they allow their children to work to teach them work ethics. But when we see the actual distribution of how the children spend the money that they earn, we see a large portion of them contributing to the households. So it's contradictory to what the parents are saying. Most children start to work at the age of 8 years in Belize. Yeah, very young. I'm talking about economic activities.
Miguel, what do you do? What kind of work do you do?
Sell tacos.
Sell tacos. Do you sell tacos every day or?
Every day.
Every day. What time do you start? In the morning? 5 o'clock. And what time do you finish in the evening?
What time finish? 2.
About 2 o'clock. You go to school?
No.
So who make the tacos?
The lady.
Which lady?
The owner where I work.
Oh, the owner you work for?
Yeah.
So when you get paid from the lady, what do you do with the money?
Save it up.
You save it up yourself or you give it to your parents?
I give it to my daddy.
Chores and other work done by children as opposed to child labor. What is the difference? The answer: the child's age and the effect on the child. The ILO recognizes that because of economic circumstances or cultural traditions, some children may need to work. Once the work is not harmful in any way, not hampering the child's physical, mental, or emotional development, still allowing the child to attend school and have time for play, and once the child is not being taken advantage of, child work remains a safe thing for children to engage in. Child labor, on the other hand, implies the exploitation of children for adult gain. This is the work that the ILO wants to stop. The first step is to overcome the attitude that makes no distinction between children working and children being capitalized upon. What adds insult to injury is that not only do children engaged in child labor carry out the most debasing types of work, but the work itself is, by and large, kept hidden. Ethnic and cultural traditions also complicate the issue.
Ethnic groups play a key role here in the issue of child labor, because we notice a big difference amongst the different ethnic groups. In particular, the Mayas, who are engaged a lot in the child labor, and the mestizos.
Culture has a great role in it. Some group encourages. They see it as a part of the culture that children ought to be working at a certain age.
Mainland territories also have the problem of protecting borders. Belize has been trying to deal with multitudes of migrant children coming into the country and contributing to child labor.
Some of the information that we're getting from the studies is that from Honduras, from Guatemala, from Mexico, that children are being, and women are being brought in to work in brothels mostly, and in the non-Belize district areas. And that is a worry, that there is seemingly a very lucrative and flourishing trade, especially in the tourist areas.
Jamaica faces a similar challenge. Not only is the incidence of child labor higher in the popular tourist areas, but certain cultural practices have become so commonplace that they are not even regarded as child labor.
What we found is that, in fact, there are forms of child prostitution, and I say that really carefully because I'm not sure we should call it this. But there are forms that are so common, it's almost normal, and people are not particularly registering concern. For example, where a family is in need of money, they have a beautiful daughter. She's 14, 15, 16. If she can use what she has to bring money into the family, I didn't hear any sounds of, well, open disapproval or concern. And that is, I think, a pretty large instance in the country.
Broken homes also play a key role in pushing children into child labor situations.
Yeah, was small, mother used to bring me here to hostel and thing about the hostel.
Your mom used to bring you here, so you alone, or you have any brothers and sisters?
Nah, brothers and sisters, them used to come too. But they're working now.
Oh. And what about your mom? Is she working now, or she's still helping you here?
Yeah, she's still hustling here, helping her, yeah.
Children from unstable homes can also be more easily enticed into doing illegal work such as drug trafficking.
En hoe lang zit jij al?
Ik 9 maanden. Ik had ingeslipt in de pitjes. Ingeslipt van die pitjes, dus hoe kan je zo in het buitenland brengen? Mijn moeder is een miljoen lang.
Zijn er nog veel mensen in de familie die dat ook is overkomen bij jou?
Bij mij?
Ja, van de bolletjes. Ken jij mensen die dat ook hebben gedaan?
Ja, ze zijn ook gelukt.
Ja. En waarom doen ze dat?
Proberen een beetje voor te brengen. Dus ze nemen het en ze proberen, nemen een kans. Want je kan ook meegaan als 1 balletje zoals een leven verliezen.
Hoe oud ben je?
13.
There are plenty illegal activities. You can sell weed, you can rob people, you can thief, you can sell drugs. You can run racket with them fellas and them other fellas because there's more people to go and pick up a 5 pound of weed. A lot of youth men under the age of 18 involved in crime out there right now because of poverty too, and the parents don't grow up with mother alone. They're real bad to your fathers just leave all the pressure on mother alone. And when that mother coming up and his son saying, well boy, all that pressure on mommy, it is breedy youth man.
Because child labor is such a new concept to the Caribbean, many adults either deny the gravity of the problem or are afraid to come forward in the children's defense. But child labor is as much a human rights issue as it is a developmental one.
The Convention on the Rights of the Child see every child as a human being. So you have that right to be a human being.
To combat the potential spread of the phenomenon, some countries have adopted a truancy campaign in which the value of education is promoted as a tool in the fight against child labor. Child laborers tend to have lower levels of education, entering the unskilled labor market at an early age without the grounding that would enable them to acquire skills and improve their prospects for a fulfilling adult working life. Guyana has an added dimension to the truancy campaign.
The Ministry of Labour does have a team of labour inspectors who inspect business enterprises, across this land. And one of their responsibilities is to look out for the children who may be employed illegally by business enterprises, children who really ought to be in school. The problem sometimes is not really with the formal sector, it is with the informal sector. It is much more difficult, really, for us to monitor those children.
As hopeful as these measures are, there are still children that they cannot reach.
Those in the agricultural sector, those we couldn't do much with them because they were kept out there working, because the parents claimed that they needed the income that they were generating to help out the family. These were kids basically cutting cane, working in the fields, in the area, picking stones, all these sorts of things that were happening, even helping out spraying of herbicides, insecticides and things in the fields.
It's very dangerous kinds of things.
Very dangerous, very dangerous.
This elementary type of work, therefore, is a breeding ground for children to be exposed to danger. Physical injuries are quite commonplace.
12 years ago, I was hustling in Labas and we just call it a round barrel. I was hopping and while trying to hop it, I fell off and I got damaged. And from since that, I used to walk with a, well, my foot did get deformed then. It's a risk. It's more than one risk. Crossing the highway is one, hustling inside is one, and under the conditions, fire, it have smoke, the dust, it have plenty things sometimes you can open. You can even open a bottle yourself and then knowing what's in the bottle, and it can be some dangerous something because it had people already had to be rushed to the hospital already because of these little small things.
Most employers, however, are rigid in their intolerance of these types of practices.
There's a high element of child labor being engaged in Jamaica, and it's the worst form of child labor. Many youngsters, both male and female, are now engaged in things like prostitution, things like drug, and those are some of the elements that we abhor so far as the employers are concerned.
Commercial sexual exploitation is wreaking havoc on youngsters who suffer a loss of innocence, plummeting self-esteem, and daily threats to their health and safety.
Over the spring break, there was talk of advertisements for baby whores, as they were described, in the Negril area. The main concern, I think, is that around the tourist areas, there's a very relaxed attitude towards sex. So children in tourist areas or in the neighbouring rural areas gravitate towards tourist areas, and that's a very easy message they're picking up.
We know that there are brothels with women in there, but you know, I don't know if we really want to own up to the fact that in this country people pay to have sex with children in one way or the other. Because what we have basically is young girls and older men being sugar daddies to a certain extent, with these young girls paying for schooling, paying for bills within the household, etc. With the knowledge of parents, or rather with parents trying to turn a blind eye to it.
Paulette Henry has conducted research into the issue of street children.
In Babis, I can also talk about some of the nightlife activities in terms of some of the younger ones, because you have in particular areas like the towns, Riverton, Rose Hall, and I know Georgetown too, there is the prostitution, child prostitution, and you would encounter in our study, we found the children who were being solicited by adults.
We asked the children themselves when we visited one of the drop-in centers in Georgetown, operated by the Ministry of Labor. They turned out to be some of the same children soliciting along Sheriff Street the night before.
It's past my castle, and then when I pass the one corner, the next corner, by a hotel, bugger them.
Them might want to take your money, and if you knock them back, then it's one say you owe me $100. And if you can get them the $100, then it's one change that $1,000, $1,500. So if you can get them all the money, just raise it more higher to $5,000 or $6,000.
What happens if you don't pay them?
Then it's one big job.
You ever got beat up?
Yeah.
So, are there any real solutions? Belize's National Organization for the Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect, NOPCA, through the USAID-funded Butterfly Project, helped reduce the incidence of child labor in the Corozal district. Surveys were carried out to determine the causes and extent of the problem, and a program was established to rehabilitate child laborers there. More recently, Jamaica has embarked on an action program that, by all accounts, seems to be infiltrating the hidden world of child labor and creating some degree of change, recruiting 626 children from exploitative work situations in Spanish Town, Old Harbour Bay, and Montego Bay. Of these children, approximately 390 have already been mainstreamed into formal school, with continued monitoring and support, while the rest are receiving remedial services such as literacy training, counseling, and vocational education.
To tell you the truth, miss, I don't like go beg work, miss. I prefer use the card, miss. I can't tell some people just shame me, so I go in the supermarket, they say, good morning, sir, you need any workers? And then start sharing, no, we don't need any workers, so we just try to look for you alone.
The response from governments in the Caribbean over the last few years has been very encouraging. There's a great willingness now to recognize that there is a problem and that it needs to be addressed. There's nearly universal ratification of the Worst Forms of Child Labor Convention, number 182, which demonstrates a real commitment from the governments to eliminate the worst forms of child labor.
I do believe that combating this worst form of child labor, like every other form of child labor, really has to do with solid poverty alleviation programs and really have to do with building in support systems for families to help them through, to help them to reorganize the way they function and the way they survive, and to offer them options to both parents and children.
It's very important that as a nation we look at child labor as our business. We have a way of removing ourselves from it because our children are not out there. Every child in the society belongs to everybody, and it's all of us business. And I think there needs to be a serious public education program to really educate people about what is happening to our children and the realities.
Child labor in the Caribbean is both pervasive and veiled, a culturally steep issue that will only loom larger with the threat of globalization and its effects. Effects that the region is already starting to see, like increased numbers of HIV/AIDS cases in young people, and that we are ill-equipped to deal with. We may never be able to reach every child in this horrific situation, but we can continue to make people aware, implement solid programs, and hope to inspire change.